Hello, I'm Eric Snodgrass, and thank you for watching this weekly ag weather update brought to you by the Farm Credit Associations of North Carolina. Got to start you off today with some satellite imagery because what we're seeing here this morning as the sun rises on Tuesday is the main reason why what is now Tropical Storm Earl, which could become a hurricane later on today, the main reason why it's staying well offshore. There's quite a bit of flow coming up just like this along the East Coast. It's one of the main mechanisms which delivered such heavy rainfall in parts of the Appalachian Mountains over the weekend and then getting over here into parts of western North Carolina. But because of that, soon-to-be Hurricane Earl will likely just get pushed out to open ocean, stay even east of Bermuda. By the way, as you're looking at this, a couple other things to take note of. This is Hurricane Danielle, pretty far to the north, but certainly sitting on top of some very warm water here, allowing it to rapidly intensify. We're also going to be talking about this next wave that just came off of Africa. So let's start with Earl. Just seeing the latest forecast tracks, very clearly going to stay out to open ocean. And the National Hurricane Center has this actually strengthening to a Category 3 or stronger hurricane by the time it moves just to the west of Bermuda, where the ocean temperatures again are extremely warm in this area. I'll show this to you in just a few moments. But I do want to show you what's following this. Let's go over to the new storms that possibly could form. And you now notice that over the next 10 days, we're going to keep a close eye on what could develop here later on today, just south of the Cabo Verde Islands. Just notice that out there past about day 5 or so, we need to be on the lookout for what could potentially be some development farther to the south versus the main track of the system kind of going more to the north. There's actually 2 separate waves here that are interacting, so we'll keep a close eye on both of those as we progress forward. Just want to say that maybe by the time we're talking next week, should a system get this far to the east, we just need to be having a better discussion about where it could potentially go. Now, in the meantime, what we're actually going to be watching delivering a lot of our rainfall is scattered storms today and tomorrow on that weak frontal boundary you saw in the satellite imagery. And then we're watching this interesting low that's going to be coming out of the lower Mississippi River Basin that's going to just track here and kind of cut itself off from the main flow that's going to deliver a lot of rainfall, possibly more focused on western North Carolina than anywhere as we progress forward toward the end of this week and getting into the weekend. But our most recent rainfall map here, just want to show you that stretching from parts of Texas and the lower Mississippi River Valley through the Tennessee and Ohio Valley and along the Appalachian Mountains, some very, very heavy rainfall. This extended into parts of New England where there is still drought, but these rains came through and likely busted that drought. Some places you're picking up 7 to 10 inches of rainfall. But taking a closer look at North Carolina, this is the weekend rainfall totals. So if you were here, east of this line, very limited rainfall, just a few scattered storms that went over the area. A lot of places here missed out on it entirely. But the farther west you go, we saw some places picking up between 2 and 5 inches of rain. And then right here, right over the Appalachian Mountains and just to their east, we saw some pockets of 6 to 8 inches of total rainfall. Now, as we take a look just quickly over the next 7 days, and I'm going to get to brand new long-range weather update stuff at the end of this video, this is what we're looking at here. There is a tropical system over here named K that might deliver rainfall to California. They'd be happy to get this given the extreme heat they've seen. There's a low going up toward the Hudson Bay, and it's going to leave a front later this week. We're going to have to watch very carefully into next week for us, but could deliver some showers and storms here. But it will be this upper level feature that's going to show up here that eventually gets pulled farther to the north and east. That's really going to allow all of this moisture to advect into, the Appalachian Mountains. And what you see here is that there's a pretty good chance of more than an inch, maybe 2 inches of rainfall, getting into this area, but lesser amounts as you get farther to the eastern side of North Carolina into Virginia. Now, when we look at what's going on kind of across the country, can I take you back to yesterday? Because it's going to be a change in this pattern that we're going to have to watch for. So this is last night, Monday night on Labor Day. So this was all of our scattered storms in this area, and there's that broad kind of open, we call this actually a baroclinic leaf that's opened up here that's going to help push Earl away. But notice across the west, you can see the extensive wildfire smoke spiraling around this large upper level high that's sitting in place here. We need to talk about where that's going because it will affect our weather very soon. So let's go here and have a look. This is the 500 millibar trough ridge pattern. So the troughs are in red and the the ridges are in red, the troughs are in blue. So those ridges, like the big one we see expanding throughout this week here, is what's going to keep us a little cooler and keep us possibly under some more cloud cover early this week, but prevent excessive heat coming our way anytime soon. It's all going to be throughout the west. But what I want to watch here is we've got this low that goes into the Hudson Bay, well, north of it here, and it will, by the end of this week, drag a front right in through here. By Thursday, it'll be here by Friday. But we do see K, and we see Earl, and tucked in between is this trough feature here. Now, we're going to keep an eye on the interaction between this trough and this one, because going from Thursday into Friday, and then into Saturday, the two begin to interact. So this upper, more northerly wave, will start to pull this trough off of Louisiana and get it going right into the Midwest. And see, they combine right there. And what ends up happening is if you cut off a low in this area, and this is again early next week, it is just going to draw that moisture into it. And that's what's going to give us our better chances for late this week and early next week for the rainfall. That's also going to keep the temperatures down. You notice going out to next Tuesday and Wednesday, no significant ridging events are taking place. And you're going to see that in the temperature forecast in a few moments. So until then, we're going to be dealing with later today. Let's get this through midday today into this evening. You can see a lot of scattered storms along that broad frontal boundary still stretching in this area, including some extremely heavy rain continuing in parts of New England. Then as we get into Wednesday morning, right about here, Wednesday midday and Wednesday evening, notice how those storms are following the front, pushing farther to the south. So we could have some locally heavy rainfall out of this. A lot of scattered storms early in this week. But then once we get out here toward Thursday, we're going to wait on the next two systems to come through. And to show you those, I got to flip over to the European model. So we've already seen through Wednesday and getting into Thursday. So here we are, Thursday morning, things clear out. Earl stays relatively farther out here to open ocean than anticipated a week ago. And there are chances for some scattered storms. Did you see that? This would be, there it is, Thursday afternoon, maybe another round of some scattered storms there. But then as we get into Friday and Saturday, this is when that big moisture plume gets pulled up as the front advances. So we have scattered storms all week, a bit of a break toward the end of the week, but here we get into Saturday and Sunday and Monday. See that? So let's do it again. Here's Saturday, Sunday, and Monday. That's when that next major system comes out of the lower Mississippi River Valley. It interacts with the front coming through the upper Midwest, and then it combines to kind of give us more enhanced lift in this area. It's also being fed around the flow of this high pressure cell pulling in that moisture. So the net effect of all of this is to give us what could potentially be a pretty wet start to next week. When we add it all up, we'll just give you a national view of this. We see that through this week, there could be some locally heavy rain through Friday. Those are all just associated with scattered thunderstorm events. But some of them could easily deliver more than 1.5 inches of rainfall. But watch the plume of moisture come up here starting Friday, going into Saturday and Sunday. See that? And that's when the next big push for some moisture tries to come in here. Now, the models want to give you over the next week much heavier rains farther over here on the western side of the state, possibly picking up more than 2 inches of rainfall. So we're going to see this kind of west versus east precipitation pattern. It's showing up in the probability of getting at least 1 inch of rainfall as well. So as we play this through early next week, we're just again looking at a map that shows us the chance of getting at least 1 inch of rainfall. You can see that it's higher on the western side of the state versus the eastern. Now all of this is kind of predicated on that upper level low moving toward the Ohio Valley. If it shifts at all in its position throughout this week, we could really change this precipitation pattern up. But this is at least the latest evidence we've got here as of Tuesday morning. Now, once we get beyond this time period, this is day 10, the 16th of September, we do see that the overall flow has broken down a bit. Where there had been a ridge all week this week, a trough of low pressure sits off the west coast. The ridge kind of moves into the Midwest, but we don't really see any indication of developing a big dome of heat that's going to sit over us here late this summer. And that also means on the side of precipitation side of things, with that flow kind of coming in like this, running up over a ridge and then exiting, we tend to be on the drier side of things going into week 2. Now, what do we not know about week 2? We don't know where that tropical system might possibly be, the one I talked about earlier coming off of Africa. We don't know if anything could brew in the Gulf of Mexico during that time period. The models aren't able to resolve that very well looking out this far. But what we do understand here is that the pattern is largely being controlled by the breakdown of the large ridge that's over the west. But while that ridge is there, take a look at this. This is today's all hazards weather map. Excessive heat warnings, heat advisories, red flag warnings, and these temperatures over the next 7 days are going to reflect that. So while we're going to watch our temperatures here, 85 today, going into 81 like in Raleigh tomorrow, we're talking triple digits in the plains, 110 in the Central Valley of California. And then we go in toward Thursday, and Friday. Cooler conditions than normal, highs in the 70s. Here's that front on Friday slicing through the upper Midwest. And the plume of moisture and the cloud cover associated with it on Saturday getting into Sunday still keeps us, on the near normal to cooler than normal side of things. So we just don't see any risk going forward of excessive heat. To stretch it out though, this would be your next 15 days looking at a 5-day sliding window of temperatures. And what we keep an eye on here is any sense of ridging over us, which we don't see. So we tend to keep the cooler bias. It's slight, but it's there all the way here past the middle of the month, even out here toward the beginning of astronomical fall, which would be around the 20th and 21st. Okay, so bigger picture things. For those that are farming corn and beans, no major threat of an early frost, although the lows will get into the 40s here after that front clears. It will be drier and hotter in the plains, which is not a good way to finish this growing season for them, this part of the plains. But overall, heavy rains are likely here from the Mississippi River east over the next 7+ days. Now from there, I want to stretch this out and give you the newest ECMWF forecast for the 18th of September to the 18th of October. And it's giving us a very La Nina look. And what I mean by that is drier. And that's normal when we have such a strong La Nina at this point in the year. But this is the likelihood, I should say, of this verifying is low. And why that is because, after we get past the next 10 to 12 days, we have no ability to resolve a tropical system forming and possibly hitting the Carolinas or coming up into the Gulf and then spreading into the Carolinas. So what this really represents is if the flow really stays biased toward a La Nina-like flow over the next, that time period, the October 18th through, September 18th through October 18th, and we don't have any major tropical systems, then sure, we could have the drier bias overall. But there's major wild cards with this. So we're just going to look at it at face value and just understand this is kind of where the model currently sits. Now from here, let's do two things. Let's first go have a look at where the La Nina currently stands. Because earlier you notice I mentioned how the systems were strengthening here in the North Atlantic. Now that's not associated with La Nina, but the shear is. And the lower shear here plus extremely hot waters are helping those systems like Earl and Danielle rapidly intensify. But our La Nina event over here maintains its strength. Quite a bit of cold water continues to upwell, and this La Nina will likely maintain this strength for at least the next 45 to 60 days, somewhere in that vicinity before we start to see any sort of wavering. So that's why you see this forecast for the United States. On the South American side of it, take a look. This is the newest 30-day update, still anticipating a near normal start for the monsoonal rains, but it's going to be getting there a little bit later than the models, I think, initially forecast. Expect those rains to start in the end of September and October, not early than normal. We are still seeing risk of being drier farther to the south. And just to keep you up to date, over here where they're experiencing excessive drought down in Southeast Asia, no major forecast of change for that in this part of China. It's still very, very dry. India, by the way, also taking on excessive rainfall with the tail end of the monsoon being much stronger than it had been. And just because we're here, let's go look at Australia. Their next 30 days is also looking wet for most locations outside of Perth, based on the new forecast. But it's this La Nina that I really want to discuss as we look at the very long-range forecast, which was just released last night. So what we're going to do now is look at the new seasonal model update. And nearly every global model out there, save the Canadian model, shows, watch right in through here, shows the ocean temperature pattern once we get to December here. January and February shows that La Nina beginning to fade. And then as we go into March and then spring of 2023, it really seems to be backing off. And that could really change up the pattern looking out there longer term. But let's come into our view of the United States. Let's look at a seasonal outlook for precipitation. But before I get here, let's bring you back to September, October, November. So the model does keep overall a slight drier look for us for September, October, November. As we go forward then into October, November, December, it's quite dry. This is very typical of a fall La Nina pattern. Wet here, drier here. We then get into November, December, January, continuing to show some drier conditions. But this is where things will start to possibly change. And remember, through the next couple of months, one tropical system could upset all of this. But as we get out to December, January, February, despite the models backing off on the La Nina, they're still carrying this forecast look of a very La Nina start to the season. And this is what I mean. La Ninas tend to favor jet stream patterns that come diving across the Pacific Northwest out of the Canadian Prairie and then run up through the Ohio River Valley. And that's why you see those areas being wetter than normal. Same thing with the Canadian Prairie. You see it's drier than normal in through here. And that's like La Nina to the T for a winter forecast. But it appears that this La Nina will likely not hang on through the entirety of winter, which means I think we could expect winter to kind of be a tale of two halves based on this forecast. What could develop, and this is the number one thing I'll be watching, is any sense of a strong subtropical component of the jet stream. We didn't have it at all last winter, which means you need to watch out for it this winter. All right? One last thing to point out here. This would get to the heart of the growing season in South America. And what we see is the latest model runs expanded the region of drought risk to encompass more of southern Brazil, Paraguay, Uruguay, and Argentina. So this could be a considerable blow to the South American growing season should it verify, pulling them back away from what was hoped to be a very, very large crop by the Brazilian growers. So we've got plenty to keep an eye on here over the next several weeks, and I'll keep you up to date. Appreciate your attention. Have a good week. Thanks.